Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for Ironheart Part 1. This of course covers episodes 1, 2, and 3 of the latest MCU project with Fantastic Four coming out, honestly, I think in 3 weeks. So I think next week is going to be the final 3 of this show, and then I'm pretty sure the week right after that is when we get Fantastic Four. So I'm looking forward to that. For this show, I was, whatever. For me, I was like, like a lot of people, I think it was like, I wasn't that invested in the character just from, Wakanda Forever. I wasn't like the biggest fan of that movie in general. It was like, I understand, obviously the way things have to go, but I was like, all right, the parts I liked, her parts weren't really the parts that I liked too much. I was just like, season's okay, season's all right. And then this, of course, is coming out years and years after that movie's come out, thanks to like actor strikes and stuff. I'm sure there are a buttload of people that have been, there's a lot of things worth talking about with this, and I'm probably even gonna partially put it in the title, but of course it's the newest show that's been like just the target of like the anti-woke community, and it's been entertaining to watch. It's always fun. To me personally, I'm a chaos type of person, so it's always funny, just to see people say stuff and it's like, do you even believe what you're saying? Like, you're literally like things that people say where it's like, you just made that up. Like, that's a flat out lie. One of the big things is they were holding on to this for whatever random reason. And it's like, you can just look up the reason. It's because of the writer's strike. That's why that happened. And I'm sure may have been, a couple additional things, but it has been stated that it was the writer's strike that caused them to kind of pause the show. And it's just interesting, watching the stuff and hearing people say things. So of course, as I go throughout the show and talk about, the bits and pieces that are here, I have to mention, the anti-woke stuff because it's fun to me. I just find it very entertaining, the absolute lies that people come up with. And like I think the most entertaining thing for me personally is the things people are bitching about. And it's like, you can just complain about the show and you don't have to do it in a pathetic way where you're like pretending that it's not a race thing, where it's like the amount of times I've heard people be like, it's crazy. Like they have this black character and then she's a thief. It's like, that seems racist. And it's like, well, she doesn't have to be a stereotype because she's stealing. Like that doesn't have to just be like, oh, it's just another person stealing. Because of course, personally speaking, I've never met a single person that has stolen anything using an Iron Man suit that they created, or been involved in any sort of super duper mega heist that allows them to get hundreds of thousands of dollars for a group of people as they hijack an underground like tunnel system from this woman. And it's like, here's hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars by putting all these people on like a secret payroll and all this stuff. And I'm like, this doesn't like that's not a stereotype. Like, I'm not looking at Don Cheadle in Ocean's 11 being like, they made him a thief. I'm like, there is no correlation to the stereotype of a black person stealing when you go to the point of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars and super suits and magic and superpowers. It's like, it is not the same thing just because it's a black person stealing. It's not even remotely on the same level. You can have two characters do the same thing within a stereotype, but you can't just stop at thief stereotype. Look at that. It's like, there is no relation. There is in no way, shape, or form a relation to the basic stereotype of somebody stealing stuff, when how they're doing it is by using a super suit and superpowers and a dude with magic that can turn invisible when he holds his breath and stuff like that. It's like, I'm sorry, it's not the same. That's just one of the many things. But as we go through, we will definitely talk about all of that stuff because there's definitely elements to it. That's the funny thing about the whole anti-woke thing. It's like, they bitch so much about just weird stuff when it's like, you could just actually talk about the writing, because I don't think the show is perfect. I think pretty much everyone across the board is like, episode 1, not that great, but it gets better as it goes on. If I had to give it a number for me, I'd probably give it like a 6.5. And I think episode 2 had some stuff that I enjoyed for sure. And then episode 3 is definitely where like it really ramped up. And of course, them doing like a part 1, part 2 thing. The last, I don't know, maybe half. I think the entire second half of episode 3, I like genuinely really enjoyed. Like they had stuff, and of course, full spoilers for all 3 episodes, so I'll be jumping around. But them going into, finding out that Joe is actually Ezekiel Stane and is Obadiah Stane's son. I like that element of it, and why he's so adamant of being like kind of the nice guy person because of everything that happened. And I love the fact that they reveal something where it's like, oh, he didn't actually die in a plane crash. That's just what they told people, because of course we didn't really want to, stock options and whatnot. If we said the guy who took over after Tony disappeared actually was trying to murder him with an iron suit, it would kind of mess some things up. So it's like, yeah, he died in a plane crash. It's so tragic. And it's like, oh, that's the lie that people were told. That's very interesting. So I like that element, getting his backstory and why he's the way he is. And apparently he's also a villain in the comics, which doesn't surprise me 100% considering his character. Like, he wanted to be the opposite of his dad, but also the instant Riri was like, hey, you should stand up for yourself, that's what he does. And it starts off with this silly thing where, he's cutting the flowers and stuff. But then it goes to, he pops up at her house and it's like, you're going to help me. And he's like, is 6 okay? And he's like, what am I saying? Of course 6 is okay. See you then. And then he does like a fist bump and walks off and it's like, hey, thanks for telling me to stand up for myself. And I'm like, instantaneously, he went to like the blackmail option, and having had it done to him, of course, he knows how to do it. I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's also one of the things, the anti-woke community is like, man, the one white guy in the show is like a pussy and stuff. And I'm like, they literally like 180 right after that, like 2/3, out of the first 3 episodes is like, he's not that character that was in the beginning and all this stuff. And then it also ties into him wanting to fight so hard to be like the opposite of his dad. And it's like, obviously, I also don't take offense. I'm not a white guy. I'm not an anti-grifter type of dude. It doesn't affect me in that way. I just thought it was a really silly character who's like a wimpy dude. And then he becomes more, overt about what he wants. And then we'll see what happens, especially finding out that he is a villain in the comics. It doesn't surprise me the most if that were to happen, because of course it's going to be traced back to him, and we'll see what happens. I'm excited for that for sure, because I'm like, I don't know how hard they're gonna go with things, especially with the way this 3rd episode ended. I was like, okay, so they do have people die and stuff like that, and that of course leads to what a lot of people consider like the big gripe of the show, is that Riri is written and seemingly is a villain. Like, she's doing all these horrible things, and she's like a bad person. She like killed a dude, which technically she just left the dude because she didn't know the door was gonna close. Like, she took off. She had no idea he was gonna die because the door would reclose after he left. Like, it almost seemed weird that it would even do that. Like, it was open from the outside, and then it's like, okay, it's a resealing. It's like, that almost seemed weird that would even happen. So when she left the guy to die, it wasn't like she knew he would die. Like, the door was open and then it closed on its own. So nobody would have seen that coming. Like, it was an accident that ended up happening after the dude was trying to kill her anyway, but it was also because she screwed up the whole mission and nearly got everybody killed. But everyone harps on that, and I'm like, she also didn't actually just like kill the dude. Like, a guy died because of her, but she didn't, I think it would be considered like manslaughter, not murder. There's a difference. But definitely he ended up dying. And of course that was a result of her, trying to stealth and do the whole the mesh weave or whatever on her skin, and messing up that whole plot there. But people harp on that, and it's like, well, she didn't like kill the dude, and also a buttload of people kill a buttload of people in the MCU. Like, they kill people all the effing time. I find that to be like a weird thing that people harp on in general. Like, the heroes are not like, we don't kill type of heroes. They don't really do that, not in the movies at least. They might do that in the comics, and they'll have Spider-Man do it in the movies, but like, they kill people left, right, and center, in the MCU. People dying all over that effing place. But I thought it was interesting going through the plot of just having a character do things in the worst way. Like, that almost, another thing that I think is so crazy, but they have characters that do bad things and then they become good people. And I feel like that's what they're doing. It might be a little bit harsher, and she might be doing stuff where she's doing things in a really dumb way, which I think is also a common trope with characters that are supposed to be like super smart and stuff. And it's like, that's where it really gets into what I think is an actual gripe with the show, which is her whole thing is about needing money and stuff like that to be better, which a lot of people think is stupid. I think that's just a motivation of her not realizing, like, hey, you don't have to do it. They even do it in the show. Like, people say that, but it's like, they actually do confront some of the things that happen in the show with her character, where like, when she's in school and she's like, people are trying to hold me back and stuff, they literally have the woman that she's talking to be like, that's a load of crap. Like, what are you talking about? We just want you to pass the class and stop selling stuff off to other students. Like, just do your work. That's what we want. And she's stuck in this mindset. And I feel like this is, once again, it's hard to tell, because I'm like, I don't know if they actually don't get it or if they don't care, because it's the whole anti-woke thing. But I'm like, I think the whole point is that she just keeps effing up. She keeps thinking, I need, which people do all the time. Like, it's a real life thing without, the need for super suits and stuff. But it's like, if I get this, everything will be perfect. And it's like, you literally don't need that. Like, you're a genius. You don't need billions of dollars to make this suit. You can just make something and then have a bunch of money. You could literally, like, if she, and this once again goes to the writing element of her character, if she just stopped and was like, hey, no one is tearing you down. We're trying to have you do the work you said you were going to do, which is basically just pass classes that are easy to you. All she would have to do is actually do that, make an app or make like some weird thing or whatever, and then she'd have all the money come in. She could do that. That is actually something that can be confronted with this show as far as writing. Like, the other stuff I don't think really applies. That I think definitely applies, because it's like, hey, you built an Iron Man suit, which a lot of people say that she stole. If she stole it, she wouldn't have been able to leave So however they're doing it, because I don't, obviously real life rules and all that crap. If it's like, hey, it's the property of MIT because she made it there, even though it was with her grant money, they would have come after her, which, once again, I don't know the legal rules of all that stuff, but they would have come after her like instantaneously if they considered it being stolen in the actual show. There is no confusion that she stole it. Like, it doesn't make sense to say she stole it and then she just went on her way. Like, if they say that she stole it 100%, which is why they put the line in there, like she made that with her grant money. Once again, don't know if that's 100% accurate, if it goes into like a business thing, like, hey, you made this thing here, so it's ours, but it's grant money. So, like there's elements to that. That argument could be there, but that's obviously why they put the line in the show. So it's like, hey, she made that with her grant money, so she didn't steal it because it was technically hers. The AI wasn't hers, but the suit was hers. And then that leads to another thing that I feel like, despite everything else that gets talked about, I don't think it makes a lot of sense writing wise. She built the whole suit. The suit was done. She picked it up, put her hand in the thing, put her feet in the bottom, and just left. She flew off. The AI was working, and the only thing that stopped it is that it was shut down because she used the school's AI system. So what does she need the billions for? She made a suit already. That's the thing I don't think makes a lot of sense, because she already made the suit. Obviously she needed upgrades. Like, that was the whole point. It's like, I need to, ambiguously refine whatever needed to be done. But I mean, she made the whole suit. She was picking up bits and pieces and stepping into them, and then, like they show her pop in and out of the suit multiple times. She can split it off into the Natalie AI doing its own thing, and then it can come rescue her and like cover her up and then take her right out of the room. So she has like the suit fully formed. I'm sure there's going to be other stuff outside of, I think the repulsor ray is like the only thing she genuinely doesn't have. I think that's literally the one component. But I thought it would have made more sense if it was like her suit was like halfway done, or like maybe 75% done, and like, every quarter% is like, I'm sure that's tons and tons of money. So it's like, okay, it's 75% done, but you need that final 25%. I need tons of money so that I can make this suit perfectly. And that's what she wants to do. Is like, you made a suit, it's good. But in her head, it's like, it has to be better than this. Like, she's trying to be a perfectionist, which leads her to doing a bunch of stupid stuff. So that's where I'm like, there are things that still in my mind is just like, well, you could just get the millions by obviously making an app, making some random product as this super genius, where they show her hustling to get money to fund into the suit. But it's like, well, if you could do that, you could actually just make stuff. If people are paying you for school projects, they would pay you more money for something real, something you could literally make on your own. You don't have to like go through a business where, once again, they would own it or have strings attached. You could make your own business and do it in a heartbeat because you have the capability to do that. That, I think, is the number one central thing, where it's like, yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But her character being stupid in that regard, I think lends to the fact that she's so hell-bent on having the perfectionist status. And I feel like that's the thing that doesn't really get shown enough. I think it's in there because I'm like, with everything that she says, where it's like, why do you need these billions and stuff? I don't think she's really been confronted, and they didn't put it in the dialogue to have her say that, but it's like, that's what I got out of it. Because I'm like, she has everything that she says she needs. She needs obviously more money to make the suit better, but capability wise, it was already done. Like I said, she had an entire suit that she took from the school and flew away. And it's like, okay, well, that you did it already. You made the suit. So does she need to make multiple suits? Like, that was another thing I was kind of confused by, because I'm like, does she need to do kind of the suit around the world thing like Tony was trying to, or perfect just the one suit? So I think it's just the one. But like, her motivations are interesting to say the least, because at first it was like, I built it just because I could. Then we get the real story when she talks with Ezekiel, and it's like, well, my stepdad was the real Tony Stark fan, and so her drive to make like this perfect Iron Man suit all on her own is because of losing her stepfather. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. I understand that motivation, and that's kind of oddly enough with like the AI thing with becoming Natalie. The making of the actual suit itself is what she was doing to kind of do that for Gary, if I'm not mistaken, that's his name. I was like, okay, I understand the motivation behind that and stuff, and that's what leads her to do all the stupid things she does with the crime and everything. And we'll see what happens, going in the next 3 episodes, because she screwed up. Somebody obviously died, and that freaked her out. And then the whole mesh thing happened, and of course that's going to lead back to Ezekiel. So she effed up on that regard, and it's like everything's falling apart. Which I would think, like I said, love it or hate it, I think once you obviously, like I said, you got to get past some of the stuff that really doesn't make sense. Like, the most basic thing is just, why wouldn't she just make something herself and then just get more money out of that she owns? That's always going to be the number one thing. Like, I don't think you have to go into all the weird anti-woke stuff and all this other crap I'm like, that in itself, like just from a writing perspective, that is the thing that I would question the most. Why couldn't she just be smart enough to just make a thing? She was already doing that, and it just seems weird. Like, it's almost weird not to have someone say it in the show as well, because they might not have an answer. Maybe, who knows, it might pop up in episode 4, 5, or 6, or someone just says like, why wouldn't you just make something yourself? Like, you're smart enough to do it, you made a suit, you could clearly make something else. Like, it has to come up, otherwise it's just kind of left open. But that's definitely one of those things where you just kind of have to answer that question. And a lot of people mention Wakanda. She does not have connections to Wakanda. They explain that in the movie, which obviously is also like 4 or 5 years old at this point, so I don't expect people to really remember. But the reason she can't contact them is because they're not giving her anything. They wouldn't even let her take the suit from the movie. They were like, yeah, all of this is Wakandan tech, you got to go back home. And that's how that movie ended. So that's why she can't contact them, because they're not going to help her. They're kind of weird like that. They'll help you out when you're helping them out, and then it's like, all right, go home. You know, like they helped her with, I think, the car that she had in that movie, which is the one they mentioned that they sold off, I believe. And then that was it. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. Like that's why they did that. So that's another random thing, because that's been coming up a ton. Like, why didn't she go back to Wakanda? Also, this is like the huge one that I always thought was stupid. And this is, of course, the number one thing I think that has been hitting like the anti-woke community, like how she's such a poor character and it doesn't make any sense. Her saying that Tony Stark couldn't be what he is without the millions of dollars. And of course, going back to Ezekiel and the stains and stuff, and everyone's been just blowing loads to the clip of him saying Tony Stark built this in a cave with a box of scraps. Of course, I wouldn't think it's that hard to be intelligent enough to recognize that the, I don't know, 100 other effing suits that he made would require millions upon millions of dollars, which of course he had, which is an intelligent thing for her to say. Like, he wouldn't be Tony Stark without the millions, which is true, because the first suit that he made with the box of scraps, which was actually his own technology, because there were Stark missiles that they gave to him, and that's how he even made the arc reactor. It was all of his own technology. They weren't scraps, they were Stark tech. That's how he made the suit. So that's something definitely worth noting, because everyone's saying that like he built it with a box of scraps. He didn't. That was a great line. It's a great moment where, you know, Jeff Bridges is yelling at the dude from A Christmas Story, but that's not really what happened. He was using his own technology to make the first suit, which also fell apart. Like, when he leaves out, like it crashes and then he walks off and they rescue him later. But it's like, the other suits that he had, even the prototype silver suit, would be millions of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands or whatever. But I'm like, all the other suits, like, that seems like the most basic thing to get. Like, I'm so confused by that. So if anyone could explain it, please let me know. But I'm like, that is the number one thing that I'm seeing, you know, kind of the anti-woke community saying. And it makes me laugh, because I'm like, I don't know how dumb you have to be to think that, but I'm like, that's not hard. That's probably the easiest thing to understand. Like I said, there's actual stuff where it's like, why didn't she make this? Why didn't she do that? Where it's like, this makes no sense. How is she not gonna get caught in the show in general? Here's something no one's brought up, which I thought was crazy. I've heard one person say it, and he wasn't a part of the anti-woke thing. He just mentioned it, and I'm like, I thought that for a second too. How is she not gonna instantaneously get busted as a person flying around in an Iron Man suit? The villains, you know, eventually, you know, obviously become the villains, but the crew that she ends up working with literally found her, because when she left school, which I think would be a big deal, you know, Iron Man type suit flies out of MIT, Iron Man type suit flies into Chicago. The villains literally see her fly overhead, and it's like, wow, you seeing this? They did whatever they did in Super Sleuth, found out who she was, found out her address, and then they recruited her. And then in the third episode, she's using the suit. Like, in the first one, it was like, yeah, she was underground, no one actually saw the suit. In the third episode, though, she was flying around in an Iron Man suit. Someone's going to be like, huh, that's crazy. There was someone flying in an Iron Man suit. Somebody just came to Chicago. Someone just flew out of MIT in the same suit. Crash landed, by the way. You know, the lady that was there was like, you need a Band-Aid or something. Hit her with you need some milk. So I'm like, they got another thing you kind of have to address. How would she not instantaneously be caught? Like, because if they're going after Ezekiel once they find the whole mesh thing, he wouldn't even have to say anything, because they'd be looking into the whole scenario, like, oh, we found this links to this and all that. Well, let's look at the cameras from around the area or something, or just eyewitnesses who are like, hey, when she flew around, there was someone with like jet boots and this and that. She would instantaneously be caught. Like, episode 4, no joke, has to be the downfall of that, where like she's 100%, you know, she obviously can't go to jail. So I don't know how they're gonna do it unless they just straight up ignore it. But I'm like, factually speaking, just baseline logic, there's one person flying around in a suit, there's one person that has been capable of making an Iron Man suit. That's like the whole thing with her character, is how smart she is, that she made it without the blueprints. Like she just recreated it and figured it out. Obviously she had a lot of help from Wakanda, but doing it the second time, by herself. So all of that together, she got to get caught. It doesn't make any sense that she could possibly get away with it unless she flips it and is like, hey, that wasn't me. I crash landed in my suit, and then she tries to figure out something else. I don't know, but I'm like, that doesn't work. That's something that they, once again, kind of like, why wouldn't you just make some stuff to get some money yourself? It's one of those things you kind of just have to be like, all right, well, that's just bad writing. The personal opinion, bad writing. I still enjoyed everything that happened, but I can always, I think that's kind of just the thing when it comes to sort of the community that does that sort of stuff versus just actually looking at a show and kind of realistically reviewing it. It's like, I can look at the actual flaws of what's happening and be like, hey, this thing is dumb, not because of whatever message or whatever they always come up with, but it's just got some issues with the writing, and it has some issues for sure. Because there are things like that where it's like, well, that doesn't fly. Like that's not gonna work. That is not gonna work in any way, shape, or form, that she somehow magically gets away with it. And she's the only person flying around in an Iron Man suit. Not to mention, eyewitness face to face with the dude that got shot in the arm, because the cop didn't die. The Hood did not murder that first cop when he was doing the wanted curving the bullet thing around the corner. He shot him in the arm and he was like, yo, he'll be fine. That could be a lie, and it could turn out that everyone that he comes in contact with, he kills or whatever. But unless that's the case, her mask was down and everything, or her mask was up. She was frozen there. He's looking right at her. He sees the suit and everything, and it doesn't, like color scheme wise, it looks the same after she crashes. Like it's, scrappy and like a couple of hints of color, but it's like, this dude was point blank. He saw you fly off. Well, I guess technically he didn't, because he was like face down. He was like just hugging his shoulder. But you're in the suit. You fly in the suit in the third mission, or in the third episode. And it's like, they're gonna figure out, they have to know, because it doesn't make sense that no one would be able to tell. It's like a giant suit flew around like our atriums. Like there's a person flying in the sky with jet boots going around. I think that like these very easy things to connect should be connected within the next episode. So that has to happen. I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't know, is it gonna be a prison time skip? I highly doubt it. But I'm like, I don't know where this goes in episode 4, but I am curious. I like the way things ended and wrapped up for episode 3 with the intensity of like, oh, like a person does end up dying. I like the idea, this is one of the big things where everyone's like, she's written kind of like a villain. I think she's just written as someone who is full of herself, which I think kind of applies, same thing with Tony Stark. But she has these bad qualities of being so smart and then not realizing, if you just tone it down a bit, you're okay. And like I said, they literally called that out in the show. Like when she's at school, where it's like, oh, people are trying to make me feel small and stuff. It's like, nobody's doing that. Like they call it out in the show, but she doesn't get it. Like in general, like, I think people with her being like, supposed to be like the smartest person or whatever, which I've hated ever since comics in general, because it's not her. Like Amadeus Cho is like, it's the same thing. Every time it's some new super smart kid, Moon Girl, I think Luna, I can't remember her last name, but like, Moon Girl and Dinosaur, it made me throw them in there, because I'd love to see a T-Rex pop up in live action. But they always do that. I've always hated that in comics. It's like, why can't they just be like lower? They're always the new smartest person. I'm like, they don't have to be the new smart. It's weird to even do it that way. Just make them a new smart person. They don't have to be the newest person. It's also the newest smartest person. I'm like, why? Just make them another smart person. It can be totally different. But they always do that. And so I think people seeing her as like, she's supposed to be this super genius, she can't screw up. But I'm like, why not? Like she does it in a totally different way that goes down a much darker path, which makes it more interesting to me, obviously, in the span of, a movie where it's like Iron Man 1, 2, or 3, where it's like you have to do it more succinctly. They got, 6 episodes to do it, pretty much, 6 full hours to pull it off. So I think the downfall of her character and like the horrible choices that she's making, where they literally have a scene where she's like, I'm not a criminal. And then once again, she gets called out by the criminal, who's like, you're kidding, right? Like everyone you're describing is a criminal, including you. It's like, it's in the show that they show her, you're being wrong. Like you're effing up, and everyone's acting like it's stupid. Like I personally think it makes a lot of sense to have that, because like it shows that the writers are not oblivious to the fact that she's effing up. Once again, there's little bits and pieces of like, she should be caught here. That's weird that she wouldn't just make this decision to make money, stuff like that. Yes, I think that's 100% in there, and that kind of just breaks it for you. But if you're just watching the show, like a lot of the complaints I see, it gets explained in the actual show, where people constantly confront her like, you're the one making this a problem. And it's like factual, she's the one making it a problem. She's the one pretending she's not a criminal. And then it takes a minute for her to be like, okay, yeah, I'm a criminal. And then she F's up at the end, gets somebody killed, gets busted with, you know, the hood having like the vision from someone, some other higher power or lower power, depending on how you want to look at it. And so, you know, we'll see what happens in part 2. But I feel like a lot of the issues that keep popping up where people say it doesn't make sense, I'm like, they confront that in the show. They have characters constantly say like, why are you saying this stuff? It doesn't make any sense. Like, she's not getting it because she's so hell-bent on like, I need these millions and millions. It's like, no, you don't. Like, you know how smart you are, yet the only way you think it'll work is if you have all this extra money. Like, she was in the school already. She could have graduated. Once again, just graduate, make something of your own. Don't go to a business, just make something yourself and then just do it. Like, technically speaking, her making the Iron Man suit is still her own thing if she made it, you know, without using the same properties that he did. It's like, hey, I kind of just built it, I figured it out, and this is how he did it, minus the arc reactor element. This is kind of how it was done. And it's like, well, there you go. Like, you were able to figure that out. You can just make money. You're okay. But she has it in her head that she's just constantly being put down. Like, it's her own issue that she's making up. And I'm like, I feel like people are missing something that they keep explaining, where they have characters confront her like, that's wrong. Like, you're like, they have her say it, and then they say how wrong she is, you know, in the actual show from other characters. And I'm like, I feel like that's the point of the show. Is like, you know, God forbid she has an arc. Crazy. I know she's done some crappy stuff. She effed up. She did things that got like a guy killed, which I find super odd that people are harping over that, where like the suit took her out of a room and then the door sealed on its own and people are like, she killed a dude. I'm like, she left that guy. Once again, manslaughter versus murder. There's a difference, Your Honor. But also, it's like, who would have thought that was going to happen? It's still because of her. But at the same time, people are acting like she just straight up murdered the guy on purpose or left him on purpose, because she didn't. Like, she left and then the door sealed on itself afterwards, and she had no idea because she got out of there as he was trying to kill her. So I find it weird that people are like harping on that as if that was like just her intentionally killing this dude. It's like, no, she's intentionally being a criminal and stealing from, like, you know, these people that don't care about the community, all that stuff. And it's like, okay, she's making bad decisions. She gets called out on being a criminal, even though she likes to pretend that she's not. Natalie calls her out on it. The literal criminal, like the hood, calls her out on it. Like, you're being weird, dude. Like, we're super thieves. Like, you're a criminal. I hate to break, you know, we're doing it in a cooler way, but you're a criminal. That's just how it is. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening with part 2. I think the show has its issues for sure. Like I said, I think for sure the show just got better as the show went on. I'm not the biggest fan of Natalie as a whole. I think she's okay. I think she got better. You know, I think it was the same thing through all 3 episodes. I was like, I think she got better as the show went on. I think the show in general, just the elements got better through episodes 1, 2, and 3. But at first I was like, you know, like them trying to do the friendship thing. Like, I understand where they're going with that, but the way they did, I was just like, I'm just not really feeling it. And yes, part of it is definitely the dialogue, because they 100% go like super far in on like every quotable black person thing. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be this every single time. Like, they can just talk and have a conversation. It doesn't have to be every black quote that I understand or get the reference to. But they definitely did that in the show. And I'm like, okay. It just feels somewhat annoying, specifically in the context of like the friendship thing, where just the way that they speak with each other. I'm just like, okay, all right. That's just me personally. I'm just like, they can just have a normal conversation, but it's every single thing, specifically from Natalie. It's not even with Riri. It's her dealing with Natalie being so over the top that every single thing is like a very like over the top. Jubilant is not a word, but I'm thinking like jubilation. That's what I was thinking of. It's like just very over the top with how hard she's trying to express like, hey, let's be friends. And so it's every, you know, hard-hitting friend type of quote that you can possibly have, and it's like, they're not there. And I don't know, I guess like that adds to the frustration that Riri feels as well, because I feel it, because I'm like, it's not just that they put the dialogue in, it's that it's so consistently, it feels like it's the same thing over and over again. And I'm like, I guess that's kind of the point, but hopefully it gets better. And I felt like it did. I felt like it toned down a bit as they actually came closer, and then it's like Natalie recalling memories that, you know, the real Natalie really had. And it's like, okay, now it's starting to tone down a little bit, and it's just actual conversations. Like, now I enjoy this a lot more. Like a lot of people, I hated the quote from day one, when of course she was like, who are you? And it's like, who else would it be, bitch? And I was like, damn it, why did they have to put that in there? So I hated that from day one, and I was like, crap. I knew I'd hate it. So that's definitely the quote for me personally. I was just like, but it got better. It definitely toned down, and then it got better. But overall, I'd still give the show like a 6.5 out of 10. Like I think it's good. And like I said, it built up. We'll see what happens when they actually add the extra elements that I know are coming for, the second part of the show. And we'll see how I really feel about it. By the end, it might end up being like 7.5, 8 even. It depends how crazy it gets, because they had someone die. They have her, screwing over Ezekiel. Well, depends on how that ends up really playing out. And then, of course, we have the official turn of the Hood, where he finds out what happened, and now he's going to be the official villain, for the next 3 episodes. And who knows what that means, considering he has magic. Who knows who else might end up dying, and what that could do for Riri, where she realizes, man, I'm an idiot. I've been thinking billions and billions when all I had to do was be like, I have a suit right here that can do everything I need. Obviously needs some improvements, probably needs a new paint job, which I'm sure it'll get, but I have everything I need. I don't have to take this route. And I think she'll already be doing that, considering, someone died and she lost the mesh thing that's going to tie back to the one person she probably could have trusted. And now I think we'll actually see that change in character, where she's like, oh crap, that was like the big twist. Like she was already realizing, like, all right, I'm screwing up, but I can handle it, no big deal, which I think is something that happens in TV all the time, where people do bad things, but they're like, I can handle it, and then they can't handle it. That's almost cliche at this point, which is why I find it so weird how hard people are complaining about this show. I'm like, this is a story, like the actual story of the show is only slightly different because of how smart she's supposed to be, but I think that's almost the point, is that she should be able to make the most basic thing, as far as like the most basic choice that anyone else can see. Like, you don't need all of that. But she's too cocky, like she's arrogant. And people mention like she's kind of narcissistic, which does kind of play into her character in the comics with how she's introduced and stuff. And once again, it's just like a love or hate it type of thing. Like, and a lot of people don't, which might be for a valid reason, might not be for a valid reason. I don't know. But for me, I like that idea. I like the fact that the character can just be a piece of shit, if we're being honest. And then they figure out, oh, I was a piece of shit. That's crazy. Darth Vader killed a lot of people, and he got to be a Force ghost. He was cool at the end. I think we can let it slide. Not let it slide necessarily, but you can watch the story play out, and then someone figures it out, like, I effed up. And she might get somebody else killed. Honestly, I would not be surprised if her buddy died. Like, I don't think they'd kill her mom, but I'm like, I don't know. I don't think they'll kill Ezekiel, but I'm like, he didn't want to switch those headphones out, and just, I don't know. He might not make it. He might not make it. I'm just saying. Because everyone else, like, if anyone in the crew died, I'd be like, that kind of sucks, but I don't really care about them that much. They're doing their crew stuff. Who cares? But if someone she knows dies, then that really matters to her. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited to see how it ends up playing out, how these last 3 episodes go, and the extra elements that I know are coming. I'm kind of excited to see that. I'm very excited to see all the anti-woke stuff for the second parts and how mad everyone's going to be. Once again, I'm just a chaos type of dude that may or may not be appropriate for the next 3 episodes as well. We'll see what happens, but I'm excited. I thought it was okay. Obviously I'm not going to get my panties in a bunch because I just don't care. I don't think everything's an agenda or everything's out to get me because I'm, a white dude. Obviously I'm not, so maybe that's why my mindset's slightly different. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just intelligent. I don't know. But I'd love to know your thoughts, all things Ironheart, Iron Man, all that good stuff. Box of scraps, you get millions of dollars to make every other suit. Still blows my mind that that's even an intelligent complaint to people where they say that. And I'm like, that's got to be the easiest thing to understand. Tony Stark would not be Tony Stark if he didn't have billions of dollars. That is factually true. She's not saying he wasn't smart. She's saying he wouldn't have had the capability to make billions of dollars worth of suits had he not had billions of dollars. That's just factually true. If it weren't, he would have made a better suit in the cave. Just saying. That's as simple as it gets. But like I said, I like chaos, so I don't care what people think. I'm just enjoying the ride. And we'll see what happens next week. I would love to know your thoughts on these first 3 episodes. What you guys are hoping to see, what you want to see, what you don't want to see, which might be the whole show depending on what crowd you're in right now. But please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.